So, a few years back, I moved into this quiet little neighborhood. Everything was perfect, peaceful streets, friendly neighbors, and a park nearby. The kind of place where you'd think nothing weird ever happens. Except, there was him. His house was directly across from mine. A single guy, mid-30s maybe, clean-shaven, always wearing these plain, neutral clothes. I'll admit, I barely noticed him at first, he seemed normal enough. But it wasn't until a couple of weeks after I moved in that I started noticing the lights. At first, it was just a fleeting observation. I'd go to bed, and the light in his window would still be on. No big deal, right? Maybe he was a night owl. But then, one night, I had to get up around 3 a.m. for a glass of water. And guess what? His light was still on. The next morning, I got up early to head to work, and, yep, the light was still glowing through his curtains. I started keeping track after that, call it curiosity or boredom. No matter the time of day or night, those lights were always on. At first, I thought, maybe he just forgets to turn them off. But after weeks of this, it was hard not to think something odd was going on. And then I started noticing other things. He never opened his windows. Never. No matter how sunny or pleasant the weather was. And I never saw him leave his house. I mean, I wanted to mind my own business, but, come on. Who lives like that? One evening, I casually brought it up to my other neighbors during a small get-together. They all exchanged glances, and one of them, an older guy named Mr. Patterson, leaned in and said, "Oh, you mean Henry? Yeah, he's different." "Different how?" I asked. "Well, he's lived here for years, but none of us really know him," Mr. Patterson said. "He doesn't come to block parties, doesn't talk to anyone. Keeps to himself. It's odd, but he's harmless. I think, harmless." The way he said it wasn't exactly convincing. Fast forward a few weeks. My curiosity was eating me alive, so I decided to do some snooping. Nothing crazy, just keeping an eye out. I'd glance at his windows whenever I passed by, and I even started walking my dog near his house more often. That's when I noticed something really strange. There were shadows, moving shadows, on his curtains at all hours. Like someone pacing back and forth. But here's the kicker. I never saw anyone actually in the house. No silhouette, no face near the window, just shadows moving in unnatural, almost jerky patterns. One night, I decided to take it a step further. I stayed up late and positioned myself near my bedroom window with binoculars. It felt ridiculous, like I was in some bad spy movie, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. That's when I saw him. Around midnight, he stepped into view. He was just standing there, perfectly still, staring at something I couldn't see. And then, he tilted his head in this unnatural way. Like, too far to one side. I swear, for a moment, I thought his neck would snap. I pulled back, heart pounding. What the hell was I even looking at? The next day, I decided to play detective. I started searching online for anything about him, news articles, social media profiles, anything. But there was nothing. No photos, no records, no past addresses. It was like he didn't exist before moving into that house. Now, I know what you're thinking, why didn't you just go talk to him? Trust me, I thought about it. But every time I even considered knocking on his door, this uneasy feeling crept over me. Like my instincts were screaming, "Don't." Things escalated about a week later. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., and I was lying in bed, unable to sleep. Out of nowhere, I heard this strange noise. A low humming sound, almost mechanical, but off. It was coming from his house. I crept to my window, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. His curtains weren't fully drawn, and for the first time, I could see inside. The room was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no decorations, just this strange, glowing machine in the center of the room. It had wires snaking out of it, pulsing with light. And there he was, standing in front of it, motionless. I couldn't look away. He reached out and touched the machine, and the shadows on the walls, they started moving. Not like shadows cast by objects, but like they had a life of their own. They stretched and twisted, and I swear, one of them turned and looked straight at me. I stumbled back, yanking my curtains shut. That was it, I wasn't messing around anymore. The next morning, I called the police. I didn't know what to tell them, so I just said there were strange noises coming from his house and that I was concerned. They said they'd send someone to check it out. When the patrol car pulled up later that day, I watched from my window. The officer knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Eventually, he tried the doorknob, but it was locked. After a while, he just shrugged and left. But here's the thing, after the cop left, the curtains twitched. Someone was watching. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, his house was empty. No lights, no shadows, nothing. It was like he had vanished overnight. I haven't seen or heard from him since. His house went up for sale a few months later, but I couldn't bring myself to ask the new owners if they'd noticed anything strange. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that whatever was in that house, it wasn't human.